whether it's a condominium,
if loans
they're
were
all
dropped,
worth $1 million. Okay?
Okay.
And now we're just talking about how are we going to set up the
It's
ownership.
just a co-op.
Does one guy own the whole $100 million building? Or do 10 condominium unit owners each own
Yeah, that's the only,
a
I'm trying to
$100,000
think.
apartment?
Why
Or
did this
do
happen in the
10
40s and 50s?
co-op
Probably
owners
because not a
each
lot of developers
own
are down here
stock
building stuff, right?
in a corporation which owns $1 million building, so that their stock is worth $100 grand.
Yeah.
It's still, the value might be reduced in the sense of its marketability, but the real value of something is, you know, the building and the location and the improvements, and this legal structure just affects the transferability, the marketability, the financing ability, and of course, how we're going to run it as a bunch of people together, because in any of these cases, unless you have one apartment owner owning a building who makes all the rules, because the golden rule, he has all the gold, he owns the building. Otherwise, you've got a bunch of people got to get together and decide how we going to live together and how we going to manage this thing so that everybody wants to live here, you know. And if you don't, then people don't want to buy your unit. You know, I mean, you're shooting yourself in the foot if you don't manage it in such a way that makes it attractive enough that you'll be able to sell your unit someday when you want to. Okay, so we could go through candidly the pros and cons, and the materials talk about if a guy's not paying his share of the expenses, is it easier to throw him out as a tenant of a co-op apartment than it is out of a condominium? But the flip side of that is, but he's a stockholder in the corporation. You can't take away his stock, you know. So I mean, it's all it's different. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's different, but nothing necessarily better or worse. It is what it is. Timeshares. Talk a little bit about timeshares. Timeshares have a horrible reputation. It's well deserved because of the way they've been marketed. In its basic, simplest, most simple sense, a timeshare is the right to use a unit in a building for a certain period of time. Usually they're broken into blocks of weeks, and usually they're condominiums. But they can be set up all kinds of different ways. They can be co-ops. They can be a form of tenancy in common among all the owners, which is just really a nightmare. But the whole concept is that for the 7th week of every year, you get to use this certain apartment in this certain building, and you buy it. And if it's a 10-unit condominium building, and there are 52 weeks in a year, then you can sell 520 units in that condominium. You're selling 52 weeks in each of the 10 units to all different people. And you have all those owners, and the biggest difference is that included in your unit is obviously furniture and dishes and all the stuff that make it usable like a vacation home, so that a different person can come in every week without having to bring in their towels and furniture. It normally is a condominium. They are heavily regulated in Florida. There is a whole section under our Florida Condominium Act on timeshares. I don't have much more to say about them other than to be familiar with that's what it is. It is what it is. They are obviously marketed in vacation destinations in Key West and Orlando and Aspen for people to buy a week vacation home. And the concept is to pay a fixed cost for this thing. Well, yeah, you paid a fixed cost for it, but still the costs of running it every year go up and up like everything else goes up, like taxes go up, like utilities go up, and due to the heavy use, every few years you're having to buy all new furniture. So it's pitched as like having a hotel room for a year, but knowing you'll get to be in the same hotel room and you own it and the cost won't go up. That's a timeshare. I want to talk a little bit about securities, but not to the length they're dealt with in the materials. And the reason is securities, when I say securities, I mean securities in the nature of, like we think of stocks and bonds and the Securities Exchange Commission, investments. Securities law is a very, very highly specialized area of law, just like bankruptcy law is, or tax law. If you get into doing anything that even looks like or smells like a security, and I'm going to tell you what some of those sniff tests are, you need to be getting a special securities lawyer. The reasons are the penalties for running afoul of the state and federal securities laws are so intense. You can lose your entire project and more in fines, in shutdowns. The concept is simply this, that, and the reason it comes up in this chapter on condominiums is because often it occurs in the condominium context. Merely selling a condominium apartment by a developer to a unit owner who's going to occupy the unit, or maybe he's going to lease it out. That is not the sale of a security. That's the sale of real estate. That's all fine. When a developer, though, goes into any type of structure or marketing pitch where he says, I'm going to manage this unit for you. I'm going to lease it out for you and collect the rents for you. You're going to make money. This is an investment contract. The kiss of death word is rental pool. I'm gonna sell you this unit, but I'm gonna take it back and manage it for you and keep it in a rental pool. And we'll hook up with a Marriott or something. And Marriott will bring people in and they will rent your unit just like motel rooms, and you'll make a bunch of money. And the purpose in the purchase or buying it is as an investment, then you have created a security. The term that governs all these things is called an investment contract. And when any speculator selling stocks, bonds, securities, or real estate markets his product to a prospective purchaser in the way that the Securities Exchange Commission would call it an investment contract, then the project has to be registered with the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission in Washington, and also has to be registered under the appropriate blue sky law, which is the securities law in any state where the property is sold. So that if some guy decides to build a condo project in Key West and tell everybody, yeah, you'll buy the unit, but I'll manage it for you. and I'll collect the rents, and you'll make money. And he's marketed that all over the country. He has to register this project in all 50 states where the property is marketed, and in Washington with the Securities Exchange Commission. And the failure to do so is just horrendous in terms of the penalties. $1 million fines right and left, forfeiture of property, criminal sanctions.
Did you say $1 million fine?
Yes, there are $1 million fines levied regularly for securities violations, regularly. And I think it's kind of scary that the text goes on and explains to you, well, here's how you do it. And here's the different exemptions that you can use, which are just incredibly complicated, to be sure that you're exempting yourself from these securities laws so that you don't run afoul of these registration requirements and get in trouble. My lesson to you is stay the hell away from it. Don't do it. Or if you do it, hire a securities lawyer that can keep you out of trouble for doing it. But don't read 3 pages out of Clayman on real estate law on the interstate exemption and think, oh, I can just do all this because on page 402 he said all I have to do is only sell it to people in one state and that'll be just fine. You know, to me it's scary that he even tiptoed into, it's fine to educate you that this is a problem in an area where you can stumble.
Yeah.
It's not fine at all to go explaining to you here's all the exemptions and the way to get around it. Because guys like Trump have not been able to get around it. You know, you run afoul of these laws and you're in deep trouble. So I merely want you to be aware of becoming involved in your real estate development career in anything that looks like an investment contract or a security or a rental pool or a management contract without expert guidance, that's all. And that's the lesson and it can happen in selling real estate. It can happen in selling vacant lots. The classic case, there's a 3 or 4 page case in the materials here. And they all cite a case that determines how you know what is an investment contract. And the name of the case is the Howey case, H-O-W-E-Y. And the Howey case is Howey in the Hills up next to Ocala. If any of y'all have ever seen it, driven near Gainesville and near Ocala, you drive through an area called Howey in the Hills, H-O-W-E-Y in the Hills. And what that was a developer bought a bunch of orange groves and was selling orange groves to prospective investors, saying, I'll manage your orange trees for you, I'll market your orange juice, all you have to do is sit back and receive all the money I'm going to make you on orange juice. You buy the grove, I'll handle the whole thing. And the U.S. Supreme Court set forth in about 20 pages there the tests for what is an investment contract. And that clearly was an investment contract, but they've applied these same tests to selling real estate projects. Selling timeshares, selling units, and that's it. So, the last thing in the chapter is a little bit of a discussion about REITs. I don't know much about REITs. I understand from what Chad said a few moments ago that they're coming back big time, and the commercial properties are now being sold to investors in REITs. I knew of them from a historical standpoint in the 70s and 80s. They're a tax shelter device. They register with the IRS and with the SEC in order to have investors invest in an entity called a REIT, which is a real estate investment trust that is going to buy properties and manage it in a certain way, and they get a special tax treatment of the funds flowing out of the properties. That's about as much as I know about. Apparently they're coming back.
They have to reinvest like 90% of their money and stuff.
See, that's the kind of stuff I don't know.
Yeah, it's-
I've heard they're just checklists of rule after rules after
They're
rules.
coming back though really strong.
I'm sorry?
They're coming back though.
Oh, that's what I heard. Yeah, I heard
especially
they're
in the
coming back. I
retail
was not aware of
sector,
that.
a lot of shopping malls being picked up by REITs and just a lot of commercial properties being picked
For
up.
20 years, they were gone. I mean,
Yeah.
at 85 to 2005, you never heard of one. But in the 70s, they financed all the condos down here. A lot of the big condos in the 70s, even the 60s, when REITs first came out, they were the construction lender that made the construction loans to build all the condos. I'm glad to hear they're back, but I'm not educated enough in them to be teaching you about them, other than to know what the term means, and that they're out there. So that's it, folks, that's all I got.
I guess you were not gonna test this on REITs?
I'm sorry?
You're not gonna test this on REITs?
No, no surprise test today, no,
So,
that was,
my understanding is it's basically it's an opportunity for cash flow injection for the company. So if they do, while still allowing them to keep the land for use, right?
On the lease back basis.
Yeah, on the lease back. And so what these companies have been doing, not just Sears who's in trouble, but other companies who just want more operational cash flow, they'll start a REIT, they'll sell the land asset on a sale leaseback basis, and then they'll use that investment into their operations, so they can focus solely on operations and not have to worry about
not have to
land
be a
costs.
property manager.
Right.
But the people invest in the REIT, that gave them the money to buy the property.
Right.
And then lease it back
Right,
and
and
return
it
it
does,
back.
so basically it's a second set of stockholders, really. Yeah, I mean, not really, because the land will eventually revert back to
Sure.
to them.
The lease will run out, and
Once
the REIT
the
will own it, and then
Correct.
hopefully sell it at a profit.
Right.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
So that's my understanding of why.
But I know there are a lot of really tight rules on it. I mean, they make a sub-S corporation look easy.
Yeah, they're very complicated.
Restrictive on who can invest, sophistication level of investors, as I understand it, there has to be, somebody has to sign off that you know,
Yeah,
that you know what you're doing, and,
It is a way for a big company to get some
well, we've
capital.
always heard about the sale leaseback as a great way to, to get rid of your land inventory and lease it back and still get to use it.
Right.
It sounds like you're even more
The
tax
same,
benefits.
this is kind of a safe way to have.
Okay, folks, I'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
feel better.
You're very sweet, thank you. I plan to, thanks.
I don't know how to work this.
How's that, huh?
Thank you, buddy. I've got a place I'm supposed to take that, hide it upstairs
Go
in
get
Fred's desk.
them all. Yeah, it's a good one. Nice.